Attack in London. Catastrophic injuries reported after a gun and knife incident outside Britain's parliament. Russian ties? A new report by the Associated Press claims the president's former campaign chairman worked to advance the interests of Vladimir Putin. Senate probe. Democrats grilled the Supreme Court nominee on the third day of his confirmation hearing. We're inside the Capitol. And reaching for the Pope. A young girl grabs the Holy Father's Zucchetto. What happens next will make you smile. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, March 22nd, 2017. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for News from a Catholic Perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. We begin with a developing story in London. An attack outside the UK Parliament leaves at least 4 people dead, including the suspect and a police officer. At least 20 others were injured after a knife-wielding man went on a deadly rampage. A vehicle mowed down pedestrians on the Westminster Bridge, and it's not yet clear whether there was more than one attacker. Police say they are treating the attacks as a terrorist incident and have launched a full counterterrorism investigation. We spoke to one journalist in London who described the chaotic situation.
The response from Londoners to an incident like this is always going to be one of shock and fear, anger, nervousness, anxiety, tension. But at the same time, I think there was, unfortunately for many Londoners, a resignation that at some point something like this was unfortunately going to happen.
Ollie Barrett says if this turns out to be a lone wolf attack, then it would have been hard to prevent. The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee says President Trump's communications may have been monitored after the election. Devin Nunes says the incidental collection does not appear to be related to the ongoing FBI investigation into Russia. President Trump says he feels somewhat vindicated by the news after alleging President Obama wiretapped him. President Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, is under fire again. A new report by the Associated Press alleges Manafort worked secretly with a Russian billionaire to advance the interests of Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Associated Press is commenting today on their investigation into allegations regarding Paul Manafort, President Donald Trump's former campaign chairman.
In Congress, with the FBI, Manafort has come up, and there's a large question that's hovering over, this administration, that's hovering over a lot of these hearings is, what was his connection with Russia? And I think this is one more piece to that puzzle.
The report, which fails to name any sources, alleges that in 2005, Manafort proposed a strategy to benefit the Putin government across the former Soviet republics. The claims come as the FBI and Congress investigate alleged Russian meddling in the 2016 campaign. The White House says that any alleged connections Manafort had from years ago to Russia are irrelevant to his work last year on Trump's campaign.
To suggest that the president knew who his clients were from a decade ago is a bit insane. He was not a government employee. He didn't fill out any paperwork attesting to something. There's nothing that he did that suggests at this point that anything was nefarious. He was hired to do a job. He did it.
Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina calls the disclosures disturbing, if true, but Graham says the president was not aware.
I'm sure President Trump didn't know anything about this. I don't know if he qualifies as a foreign agent.
A little deeper into this story is Tim Carney, commentary editor of the Washington Examiner. Tim, put this into context for us. The Associated Press hasn't released any sources, hasn't named any sources specifically. They're quoting anonymous sources. How reliable is this story?
Well, the reason that I find it pretty reliable is it's based primarily on a document, which is sort of this business pitch that Manafort was apparently making to the Russian businessman with close ties to Putin. And neither the White House nor Manafort has said that pitch wasn't an authentic document. What the anonymous sources come and they say that the pitch was accepted, that Manafort actually signed this deal, and that it went at least through 2009, and we don't know exactly how far. So that's what makes me believe that this was actually going on, is that the reporters actually got their hands on a document which hasn't been questioned.
Are the White House attempts to downplay the Manafort's role in the campaign the best strategy, do you think?
No, because they keep saying, oh, well, Manafort, he was just with the campaign for a few months. He was a campaign chairman. I mean, that's in some sense the guy at the top of the campaign. I was at the Republican convention. A lot of reporters saw Manafort sort of making the trains run on time, actually sort of running things down there in the convention. that they let him go. If I were trying to defend Trump, I'd say, hey, they let him go after his ties to pro-Russian forces in Ukraine came out. Because remember, that's when he was let go of the campaign. That, I think, would be a stronger defense. As of now, saying, oh, he wasn't playing that much of a role in the campaign at the time, that's a sort of a weird defense that I don't think really exculpates the campaign.
FBI Director James Comey confirmed that the FBI is investigating potential ties between the Trump campaign and the Russian government in connection with the campaign. Are these revelations, do you think, damaging to the president?
I mean, I think it's damaging in that it hangs over his head as a shadow. Just being investigated doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Mm-hmm. Exactly what the communications were, we don't know, and exactly who in the campaign was communicating. Was it just Manafort? Was it somebody higher up? Was it somebody way low down? And what were their communications with Russia? It could be something that could violate the law, but not really be an ethical problem. The fact is that there are lots of other little Russia problems around Trump. That's what makes it problematic, that he had Michael Flynn, the national security advisor, Manafort, and now what Comey confirmed. So it's this whole constellation of Russia issues.
Well, noting Manafort, the FBI investigation, what can we expect Congress to do next?
So the Republicans at first were sort of pushing back on the idea of investigating, but I think that now you could say we want Manafort to come forward and tell us exactly what his relationships were, because he did deny directly dealing with Russia when it was brought up that he was dealing with Russian allies in Ukraine. Now, this report makes it seem like he was directly dealing with Russia, so if Congress wanted to go and try to investigate Manafort, that could be an angle they go.
Tim Carney, commentary editor of the Washington Examiner. Thanks for your insight, Tim.
Thank you.
Gliding on the path to confirmation, Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch wards off attacks by Democrats on abortion and assisted suicide. Today is his third and final day before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi is in our skybox above the hearing. Jason.
Why Democrats have been trying to get Judge Gorsuch to reveal his opinions on those hot button issues. But again and again behind me, he says he just can't do that as a judge. But what he can say is he says he'll follow the law and respect judicial independence and precedent.
7 judges.
Today, Illinois Democrat Dick Durbin presses Neil Gorsuch on his views on life, quoting the judge when he said,
"The intentional taking of human life by private persons is always wrong." How could you square that statement with legal abortion?
The Supreme Court of the United States has held in Roe versus Wade that a fetus is not a person for purposes of the 14th Amendment. And the book explains that.
Do you accept that?
That's the law of the land. I accept the law of the land, Senator, yes.
Carrie Severino of the Judicial Crisis Network is leading the fight to get Gorsuch confirmed. Her group is spending $10 million on this campaign.
When he says that, I don't think he's meaning to say, yes, and I would not vote to overrule it and make that judgment call. What he's saying is this is a decided case, this is currently precedent, and it currently is the law of the land, whether we like it or not.
When asked about assisted suicide, Gorsuch got personal.
I've been there with my dad. Okay. And Senator, the position I took on the book on that was anything necessary to alleviate pain would be appropriate and acceptable, even if it caused death, not intentionally, but knowingly. Okay? I drew a line between intent and knowingly.
Carrie Severino says that answer shouldn't trouble Catholics.
He also was very clear to make the distinction, which I think is a very Catholic one, of there's a difference between refusing treatment and saying just I don't want to be poked or prodded anymore and not wanting these extraordinary measures and actively seeking suicide.
We're expecting the confirmation hearings to wrap up tomorrow with outside witnesses speaking about Judge Gorsuch. The full Senate vote is expected before their Easter break, which begins April 7th. The Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, says one way or the other, Judge Gorsuch will be confirmed. Wyatt?
Jason, what have senators been telling you about how Gorsuch has been doing?
Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah says it's obvious that the judge is a man of deep conviction and extremely bright. The longest-serving Democrat, Patrick Leahy, says he wishes the judge would get into more specifics with his answers about cases, but the chairman of the committee, Chuck Grassley, says that Gorsuch really has to be very careful because he can't really prejudge or reveal how he may decide future cases that may come before him.
Correspondent Jason Calvi reporting from Capitol Hill. Thanks, Jason. Former Vice President Joe Biden returns to Capitol Hill today to mark the 7th anniversary of Obamacare. He joined House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi to slam the new GOP health care overhaul.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for helping to pass the bill and for being with us today and continuing the fight to protect our care. Thank you.
I ain't going anywhere. This is not going to pass.
The anniversary comes one day before Republicans will vote to repeal and replace the law. Health Secretary Tom Price says every American would have access to the kind of coverage that they want under the GOP plan. President Trump is meeting with the Congressional Black Caucus at the White House. Press Secretary Sean Spicer says the president wanted to find common ground and continue their dialogue. Earlier this month, the president met with one of the group's prominent members, Representative Elijah Cummings of Maryland, on the rising price of prescription drugs. President Trump will attend the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO's Leaders Summit in Belgium in May. The announcement comes after Secretary of State Rex Tillerson's decision to skip a NATO meeting next month. The president has been critical of NATO in the past, once referring to the alliance as obsolete. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Iraqi forces go door to door fighting ISIS in Mosul neighborhoods. Forces are pushing farther into the western part of the city as they overtake ISIS. Today, the United States urged coalition partners to step up efforts in Iraq to defeat the terror group. Ed Pinton, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register, just returned from a 3-day trip to Iraq. Ed, you traveled to 2 liberated Christian towns. Where did you go and what did you see?
Yes, we went to 2 towns called Karakosh and Karamalesh. And they are only 9 miles from Mosul, and you could even hear the fighting still going on there. Those towns were liberated back in October, and we went really to see what damage there was and what needs to be done, and there's extensive damage there. Almost all the houses were either destroyed or firebombed and burned almost beyond recognition. So there was a great deal of damage, a great deal of reconstruction is needed there, and of course that impacts the local people who feel very saddened and losing quite a bit of hope about coming back to their homes.
You mentioned you can hear a little bit of the fighting from those towns. How close are the areas to ISIS-controlled territory? How close are they to danger?
Well, ISIS has now been really cleared out of that whole area, except for one part of Mosul, which they're trying to liberate now. But most of it is now clear. What danger there is now is a kind of lawlessness, because of course there's no real authority there now. And there's Christian militias there basically governing it, as well as Shia militia. So there's quite a bit of sort of a sense of anarchy there in some ways. Certainly no government to speak of. And also it's without services like water and power and things like that.
Are those really the main concerns then? I mean, is it lawlessness? Is it resources? Is there any other concerns that the Christians there have right now?
Yeah, those are the main ones. The main one is really security. That's what they kept telling us. What we really need is security, but also in local services, even in Erbil, which is a safe part of Kurdistan where all the refugees went to and fled to. The resources there are running out, partly because the world thinks that the place is being liberated, so they don't need help anymore, but that's not the case. So the local clinic we went to is running out of medicine, and in fact in 10 days, if they don't get medicine for chronic illnesses, they'll have nothing to give the patients. So there's a lot of urgency there, a lot of concern about how to deal with the situation going forward.
When you think about the future, how do Christian Iraqis view President Trump and their hopes and dreams in general moving forward?
Well, everybody we spoke to, priests, lay people, everybody, they pin a lot of hope on President Trump, who they see as a great possible champion for their cause. They had no time for Obama. They thought he failed them terribly. But they really do think that President Trump is someone, at least from the statements he's made, will help them and bring them out of this crisis. They really need, they said, to have the international community act on their behalf to bring about security, because without security they can't reconstruct, they can't build businesses, and they can't go back to their towns.
We hear so much about the plight of Christians there in the Middle East. It's nice to hear from someone who was able to go there and talk to them firsthand. Ed Pinton, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register. Thanks for talking to us about it.
Thanks, Wade.
Coming up, a former law clerk shares his personal experience working with Judge Neil Gorsuch, President Trump's Supreme Court pick. And a curious little girl meets Pope Francis today. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. As we told you earlier, Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch is facing another long day of questioning on Capitol Hill. He was asked by one senator what vision he shares with President Trump.
I have admiration for every member of this committee, for the President of the United States, for the Vice President of the United States. But respectfully, none of you speaks for me. I speak for me. I am a judge. I am independent. I make up my own mind.
Today is the final day of testimony from Judge Gorsuch. Join us now is Michael Connealy, a former law clerk to Neil Gorsuch and to Justice Antonin Scalia. Michael, you've had personal, professional relationship with Gorsuch. Have you heard anything at this point that surprised you?
No, I can't say I have, really. I mean, I think if you've been watching the hearing these past couple days, the American people have seen the judge I know from clerking with him, and that's someone who's very thoughtful, very well-humored, and at times very moving about his thoughts on the law in this country.
Democrats are saying Gorsuch's past rulings show partisanship. Do you think they have a valid point?
No, I don't think so. I think if you look at his rulings overall, as he said a few times, he's been in the majority on 99% of the over 2,700 cases he's decided on the 10th Circuit. And I think they've focused on a few rulings, but some of those have been unanimous, and the other judges on his panel were appointed by Democratic presidents. So if you look at it from that perspective, it's really hard to see partisanship in his rulings.
In the hearings, Gorsuch has responded to a wide range of somewhat complicated, sometimes even controversial issues without really necessarily taking a position. Is that pretty standard for Supreme Court nominees?
Yes, I think his answers have been very much in keeping with what his predecessors, going back 5, 10 justices before him have said. And I think it's important to realize why he can't provide more information than he is. It's not because he's trying to dodge the questions or be an enigma. It's because he can't prejudge the cases. And most importantly, he can't let these hearings or the process turn into sort of campaign promises where in order to get elected or appointed to the Supreme Court, he has to act as though he's running for election and making promises to the senators or to the president.
Even if he risks frustrating some of his supporters?
Well, yeah, I think it's not a popularity contest. He has to look at it as a judge and in keeping with his professional standards. And I know that that's something he takes very personally, whether or not he's up for a Supreme Court nomination.
So you clerked for both Justice Scalia and Judge Gorsuch. Conservatives are hoping that Gorsuch will follow in Justice Scalia's same, at least judicial philosophy. Are they going to be happy, just sad, disappointed? What do you think?
Oh, I think they'll be very happy. I think Judge Gorsuch has already proven himself to be a very capable defender of Justice Scalia's judicial philosophy, which is originalism, which is that the Constitution means what it meant when it was enacted, and if people want to change the Constitution, they have to pass an amendment. They can't go to court and ask judges to change it.
Very good. Michael Connealy, a former law clerk to Neil Gorsuch and Justice Antonin Scalia. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And for more in-depth analysis of the Gorsuch confirmation hearings, visit our news partners at National Catholic Register. That's ncregister.com. Pope Francis calls the migrant and refugee crisis the biggest tragedy since World War II. He made the off-the-cuff comments during his talk at the Vatican, where he focused on the virtue of perseverance.
E la capacità di sopportare, portare sopra le spalle, sopportare, di rimanere fedeli.
The Holy Father says perseverance can also be defined as patience, and when we experience God's consolation, we are obliged to extend it to others in need.
Auspico che anche quest'anno, tale momento privilegiato di grazia.
The Pope ended his weekly talk by encouraging the faithful to take part in the 24 Hours for the Lord this weekend. The event encourages Catholics to go to confession during this time of Lent, or at least begin the path towards reconciliation. An encounter between Pope Francis and a 3-year-old girl goes viral. As you can see there, the Pope went to kiss Estella Westrick's cheek. The toddler took his zucchetto. Luckily, Pope Francis has a great sense of humor and got a good laugh out of it. The Pope is the only one, of course, who wears a white zucchetto. Cardinals wear red ones. Up next, the unveiling of the tomb of Jesus after a multi-million-dollar restoration. And we'll show you what firefighters in Italy discover amid the rubble of an earthquake. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. One pro-life group estimates that every year 1.4 million women seek abortions. The Human Coalition says it's developing innovative ways to reach those women who are vulnerable and underserved. The Human Coalition's National Outreach Director, Reverend Dean Nelson, joins us now. Reverend Dean, you say that every month there are 1.85 million searches about abortion procurement. How have you figured out a way to kind of use those searches to reach women who may be in need?
Yeah, that's actually kind of how Human Coalition really got its start, was we kind of stumbled on the fact of realizing that there were all of these searches, internet terms, abortion-related topics. And so we thought, hey, is there a way that we can actually connect and engage with women online through using innovative tactics? And we discovered, in fact, we certainly have, and it's actually how we actually got started and have effectively reached women all across the country.
And is that effective use of technology? Specifically, what does that mean?
Yeah, so essentially we will have in key markets aggressive advertising, and women will typically find us either on their cell phone, on their computer, and then they can contact us. We have a contact center where we engage with those women and then counsel them and connect with them to go into one of our women's clinics in one of the urban areas that we would serve. And so we found actually that prior to this, it was about a 3% market penetration rate in the pro-life community. And we've actually increased that in cities like Pittsburgh to up to 40%. So we're essentially, say, like in Pittsburgh, engaging with almost 40% of the women who are looking to get an abortion, bring them into our clinics, and then engage with those women and help them to make a healthy choice for herself and her unborn child.
Well, you say there in your community outreach you focus on speaking directly to women. Why is that so important?
You know, one of the things that we've learned is while we can engage with women using technology, the key is being able to connect with those women through our research, and we have over 90,000 recorded phone calls that we've done with women seeking to get an abortion. Through a lot of different tests and innovation that we've done over the years, we've come to know that being able to create an environment that makes women feel comfortable, presenting a sense of calm, is what really helps women to make a favorable decision. There are a lot of other factors that go into play, seeing an ultrasound and other things, but we've done a lot of testing into this over the last 4 or 5 years, and we've come to conclude that being able to get in front of a woman, to talk to her personally, to engage her effectively, and then overcoming the potential obstacles that she might have, whether it's she's going to get an abortion because she doesn't have a job, she's going to get an abortion because somebody is forcing her. But those are some of the things that we've overcome through engaging with women one-on-one.
Reverend Dean Nelson, National Outreach Director for Human Coalition. So nice to hear about your operations.
Thanks so very much.
After 9 months of restoration, work on the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem is done, and Jesus' tomb is reopened to the public. Restoration work started last spring and cost millions of dollars to complete. The Catholic Church and the King of Jordan are among those who made donations. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is the only place where 6 Christian denominations practice their faith at the same site. And months after an earthquake destroyed a basilica in Norcia, Italy, firefighters entered the building and rescue a statue of St. Benedict. The Italian fire department posted this video of the rescue on Twitter. Crews entered the crypt of the church and removed the statue yesterday. After the rescue, one of the firefighters put the jacket on the statue. And we thank you for watching our newscast tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Good night, and God bless.